Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. I'm your host, Calvin Timms. You can find me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin. You can find my co-host over on Twitter at Dynasty_Dale. And we're back. So this one is actually going to be a little bit late. I was hoping to get this one out last Friday, but the news didn't come out in time. I think we were pretty accurate in predicting who this was going to be if you go and watch our coaching roundup videos from last week. But we weren't able to get it out on time. I had a conference last week, didn't get back until Friday night, was pretty wiped, and now we're recording here today. Had to go see, Ant-Man Quantumania with my boy Dale yesterday night, so couldn't record yesterday. So getting this in on Sunday. First episode of the week, but the rest of the week is going to be pretty exciting. We are going to be talking over all of the free agents for all the positions and kind of some potential landing spots we see for these guys and some potential value buys. There's going to be we might have to break running backs up into 3 episodes. There's so many running backs this year that are free agents, and then you take into account the draft. It's going to be a wild running back marketplace out there. But that said, Dale, how we doing today?
Hey, I am doing pretty good for a Sunday night. So
there we go.
Yeah. So
Can't complain.
hard to.
First Sunday with no football. No football.
Well, I wouldn't go that far because we do have the XFL if you are watching. So
First Sunday without football.
right.
No, it's funny. So XFL is owned by The Rock, right? And I saw somebody put out on Twitter earlier that The Rock's going to be our next president if he chooses to run for it. And, honestly, I probably believe that just because of how people idolize these
Insane people are
celebrities more than anything.
Yep.
But, man, people that don't believe he does steroids, whew, man, yeah, I want some of your.
He has to.
I want some of whatever you've been smoking for ignorance. Ignorance is bliss, I guess.
Right.
But man, The Rock is definitely hitting that stuff hard. He's like 60 and he's jacked. There's no way. Not even the best athletes in the world are that jacked at 60. Come on, people. Let's go. All right. So that said, we're going to get into our first head coach. Well, last head coach, I guess, for the cycle. Arizona Cardinals bring in Jonathan Gannon, who was the defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, the Super Bowl losing Philadelphia Eagles. It's a week later and it still feels pretty good to say that. To be fair, I really wanted my boy A.J. Brown to get a Super Bowl, even after he roasted the shit out of Juju Smith-Schuster on Twitter this week. Pretty good one there. But yeah, Jonathan Gannon is going to be a defensive-minded head coach, which is a very interesting development. And with him, he was able to bring over the Browns quarterbacks coach that he has a history with, Drew Petzing. Don't really know much what this guy's going to be able to do as an offensive coordinator. And today's episode, there's going to be one guy, maybe 2 guys that we can talk on that were actually successful offensive coordinators at the NFL level. The rest of them are major question marks. So first off, you have a new head coach in Jonathan Gannon. We have no idea how he's going to really run this, but anytime you get a defensive-minded head coach, it already kind of puts me on edge a little bit. And then you put him in charge of the Arizona Cardinals defense, which has been garbage for years. Oh my goodness, this just seems like a disaster waiting to happen. Then you get a guy who's supposed to work with Kyler Murray, who is a quarterbacks coach, which is great, for the Browns. Now, if you know anything about the Browns, they don't really have the best quarterback situation. They got Deshaun Watson, but he played like garbage this year. So if this guy was in charge of coaching up Deshaun Watson, it's not just the ring rust for Watson. He did not do a good job. Now, I will say he did do a pretty good job with Jacoby Brissett as the backup, but now you're calling plays, son. It's going to be a tough transition there. And you got to work with Kyler Murray, who might be the most difficult quarterback in the NFL. So what are your thoughts on this whole situation? How are you kind of reacting to the Cardinals this offseason?
I'm not surprised. I feel the Cardinals are a big blunder. They've always had been in my adult life. I think, I'm not really shocked that they picked Gannon. I think they wanted somebody who has I guess you can say winning pedigree, but really his defense wasn't that
It was good.
Against,
It was pretty good.
it was good because they had a lot of stars
Yes.
and they had a lot of good players.
Yes.
I but but really when the rubber hit the road there and they were playing these top tier offenses,
Mm.
they weren't good at all. They
No.
they gave up a lot of yards. I feel he doesn't eat very well because someone who we're going to talk about later, Eric Bienemy schemed the living crap out of him and
Yes.
made him look like a fool um, last Sunday. So um, I'm not really excited about this hire. I was hoping I if I would have felt a lot better if it was somebody that was more established. Like it's like the third time in a row they've gone with a first time head coach,
Yeah.
and that really concerns me. And I don't really see a direction where this uh, franchise is going other than down.
Yeah, it's very concerning. The good news is they
Yeah.
do have new GM to go with this, so
Yes.
it's not going
Yes,
to
they do.
be it's not going to be what was his name? Steve Keim. Is that who it was before? He's
Yeah.
not going to be making all these
Fine.
terrible selections. So we'll see what they do. The biggest question that I have now is Kyler Murray going to be a Cardinal start of this year? Are they going to trade him this offseason? Now, I've been saying for a long time they should trade Kyler Murray because, one, you're paying him a ton of money. Two, he's injured, and you're going to waste an entire year of his contract, right? Three, the team is terrible. You're paying a franchise quarterback a lot of money to not play and to try and carry a team that is just not very good. Four, Kyler Murray is an outlier of prospects. He's Bryce Young, only a little bit better, right? He's not going to be able to hard carry this team like Patrick Mahomes would be to the
Hmm.
Chiefs, right? So there's a lot of red flags, man. And you throw in Kyler's supposed
Injury.
difficulty of being able to
Yeah.
work with him. I just don't really see what the appeal
Yeah.
is. You got a new GM, you got a new head coach. What do they want to achieve by keeping Kyler, right? The better thing would be to do kind of what the Houston Texans did with Deshaun Watson. You trade him to a quarterback needy team, you're not going to have him for the first half of the year 100%. He's going to probably be out there in week 1, but he's probably not going to be 100%. He's not going to be the mobile Kyler that you kind of expect. But maybe you can kind of Joe Burrow it a little bit and nurse him back to health a little bit more, and get more accustomed to your scheme from the pocket. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who would trade for Kyler Murray. Again, given the outlier status of his human being. And then, yeah, the difficulty, it's going to be interesting to watch for. Now, if it's me, I'm probably selling Kyler Murray for whatever I can get this offseason. If you can get anything close to his
Yeah.
value, I'm probably moving on just because, one, the injury, two, the question marks of this offense. You're not going to know what this offense is going to be able to do because the Cardinals don't have a backup that's Kyler Murray caliber, right? So whatever this guy's going to scheme up, it's going to be like the Browns where you got Jacoby Brissett going to Deshaun Watson. Two completely different skill sets there, right? So what are you going to be able to expect with Kyler Murray? We have no idea. So we're an entire year away from finding that out. There's enough quarterbacks that come into the league every single year that I'm okay moving on from Kyler. And if he returns to form, after he has a down year in 2023, you buy him then. So that's my advice with Kyler Murray. These coaching changes do not make me excited about anybody for this team. James Conner, he's probably the best piece on this team at this point in time. Hollywood Brown is makes me a little nervous. Maybe he can kind of slot into the Amari Cooper role with this guy's offense. DeAndre Hopkins is probably gone. And then you got
Hmm.
what's his name? The small guy. The other wide
Rondell
receiver.
Moore.
Yes, Rondale Moore. One of the 1,000 Moores in the league right now. And it's just,
Yeah.
it's not a good situation. So Arizona Cardinals, I like the hire of Jonathan Gannon. I think there's a lot of potential there, but this roster is so far away. I honestly think Kyler's going to be on the trade block and he will be moved by the NFL draft because they have pick number 4. Don't forget they have pick number 4. They can get a Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, one of these guys if they really wanted to and just sit on him for a couple years. He doesn't have to be great right out the gate. They can develop him in year 2, year 3. Maybe that's when they try and strike in this division. So that's my thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals. We're going to jump to a couple other coordinator roundup. We got new offensive coordinators for all the teams now. So the first one, the biggest one probably, the only guy here with any experience now is going to be Eric Bienemy to Washington Commanders. Now, it always cracks me up because Eric Bienemy every single year, why is he not getting a job? Why is he not getting a job? He should be a head coach. He's been interviewed by like 30 teams, and he has not gotten a head coaching job. There is something else behind this stopping him from being a head coach. It's not that he's black. I hate that excuse. Eric Bienemy now has the perfect opportunity to go and prove what he can do with Washington. Unfortunately, Washington does not have a franchise quarterback. There's all this talk about Sam Howell. I guess, we'll see, but it's to be fair to Eric Bienemy, there are good pieces there. They have a pretty solid offensive line, good wide receiver weapons, good running back weapons with Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson.
Yep.
So the only real question mark is tight end and quarterback. So maybe they can address that even further in this draft. Maybe who I'd love to see with them would be a Darnell Washington. Dude can just block like crazy, and he's pretty athletic as well. This would be a good fit, in my opinion. So Eric Bienemy going to Washington, very interesting. If he does really well, maybe he can kind of prove to people that it's not Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Because, again, that's the other side of this. There's all the off-the-field stuff with Eric Bienemy, and you can go look that up. But lots of players say that he's not a very good guy to be around, right? But then in the same time, he's been in Andy Reid's shadow his entire career. Like, he hasn't proven anything. Oh, Andy Reid gave him some play calling, but Andy Reid creates all the plays. Like, so it's kind of difficult to give Eric Bienemy credit. We don't know where that credit falls, right? Is it Eric Bienemy mostly running this offense, or is it Andy Reid? I'm guessing Andy Reid, but I honestly couldn't tell you. So now with Washington, he's the assistant head coach. So if anything happens, maybe he'll be the head coach if Ron Rivera gets fired halfway through the season for underperformance. But he's got a lot to work with, and he's got a very good shot now to go and prove what he can do. I think Eric Bienemy is going to be a fairly good offensive coordinator. What are your thoughts on him?
I'm just glad he gets to kind of break out from Andy Reid's shadow. And see what he really can do. I've been seeing people on Twitter go crazy and think Sam Howell is going to be the next Patrick Mahomes, which I think is extremely comical and is not going to happen.
Yeah, he's going to throw for 5,000 yards, right?
I know, and he's going to throw for 40-something touchdowns, and it's going to be like Patrick Mahomes incarnate. So I don't think it's going to be quite that, but I think it's going to be. I think they're going to use a lot of their weapons that they've gotten the past couple off seasons, like with Dotson and Samuel coming there, and they still have Terry McLaurin there. So, I think they still have a very formidable offense, which I'm really excited about them getting somebody who's going to be able to call hopefully good plays and take some of that Andy Reid system with them. But on the other hand, I am a little hesitant to see how he does because I know like with the like with the Matt Nagy experience in Chicago. I know that's a different feel since Nagy was the head coach, but I think it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths seeing how poorly the offensive coordinator from the Chiefs ran a team and ran something other than a Andy Reid offense.
Right.
So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he does, but I think he has a good chance to even become the head coach if things don't go super well with Ron Rivera.
I will say, I don't think that Dan Snyder will probably not fire Ron Rivera, even if he does poorly. Dan Snyder is in the process of selling the team.
Yep.
Sometime in the next decade, this team will move on, right? And having Ron Rivera as your head coach just kind of gives him a lot of cover and shielding from the football side of things. So I don't think that if things go poorly that he'll fire him regardless, unless he's trying to. And this is the type of person that Dan Snyder is. So The only reason I think that he would fire Ron Rivera is if he can score brownie points by hiring a black intermediate head coach in Eric Bienemy. That's whether he earns it and deserves it or not, that is something that Dan Snyder would do just as a scummy kind of ulterior motive type of thing, right? Now, again, I have no say on Eric Bienemy. The problem is I just don't know what he can do. We'll see this year what he can do, but yeah, I just think that Ron Rivera is pretty safe at head coach unless something crazy happens. But yeah, it's a pretty good setup for Eric Bienemy. We just need to see what they can do at quarterback now. So I would be very interested to see. I honestly would be shocked if Derek Carr does not go or Jimmy Garoppolo does not go to Washington. This team is the perfect fit for one of those two guys. I don't even like Derek Carr, and I think he'd be pretty good in the Washington system with Eric Bienemy, right? So I know Derek Carr is doing his rotations around the league, meeting with everybody, but yeah, I think Washington would be a great fit for Derek Carr, or again Jimmy Garoppolo, one of those two guys who are just more of a system quarterback and they can kind of run the offense for him. So something to watch out for, but congratulations. I do think this does give, if they can get a competent quarterback in there, I think all of the weapons for this team take a slight bump up. I like Antonio Gibson a lot more now with Eric Bienemy. Maybe he'll actually be able to see playtime. Now, I can't control whether or not Ron Rivera is going to put him on the field, but what we saw with the running backs in Kansas City, Jerick McKinnon, Isaiah Pacheco, these two guys, they had very distinct roles. Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson fit very distinct roles for Washington. So we'll see if they can use that for fantasy football. So I do think those guys have a little bit of a bump up. Tight end situation, again, nothing there. But then the wide receivers, you got Terry McLaurin, you've got Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel. I like that a lot for fantasy. I think you could have two, maybe three wide receiver twos. Maybe Curtis Samuel is probably that he could maybe finish in that 30 as a wide receiver 3. But I think there's a very real possibility you could have two wide receiver 2s on this team and maybe a wide receiver 3, which, again, not everybody can be a top 12 guy. You got to get some value somewhere. So Terry McLaurin, I feel like his price has never been cheaper. And with pairing him with Eric Bienemy, I think is a very, very good bump in his value. So any last thoughts on Bienemy?
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with that. Like on the offensive weapons, I mean, there is a bump. I mean, there is a tight end in Washington. I think it's Logan Thomas. If he's still there and he's not injured.
Yeah, that's the problem. He's been injured so much, right?
I know he's been injured a lot. But I mean, all of these weapons get a bump, and I'm very excited. And just like what you're saying, like it's probably the cheapest that they're going to be. So I mean, if you're needy and you think you can get somebody on the cheap, I would get one of those guys for some good value.
All right, so the next guy we're going to talk about now is going to be Todd Monken. This guy's actually got the second most amount of experience as offensive coordinator, so that's kind of why we're jumping to him over Canales. We'll talk on him last. But Todd Monken, he's coming back to the NFL from college. He was the offensive coordinator for Georgia the last 3 years, and Georgia back-to-back college football champions. Stetson Bennett, my guy, has all of it to thank to Todd Monken. He's coming over to be the Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator. Now, this is very, very interesting. I had made the prediction that Eric Bienemy would go to Baltimore. You got pretty good quarterback situation, good weapons there and everything like that. I am very intrigued to see what happens with Baltimore. So first off, we need to talk about Lamar. Are they going to get Lamar back? Are they going to keep him? I still lean yes. They've got Mark Andrews then. They've got Isaiah Likely. I like that 2 tight end system. Todd Monken ran a lot of that. You look at Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington. Both of these guys saw a lot of play in Georgia under Todd Monken. Running back wise, Georgia was not very amazing on the ground. This does have me a little concerned about J.K. Dobbins in this offense. I love J.K. Dobbins' talent, but I do worry that from a fantasy perspective, J.K. Dobbins is not going to be what we kind of hope with this team. He's not going to get a lot of passes. Lamar, one,
Yeah.
doesn't dump it off to him very much. Two, vultures a ton of touchdowns away from him. And three, it's very, if you're only relying on him for rushing yards, it's not a great situation. So J.K. Dobbins is actually somebody that I think could be a major buy in season of next year if he starts off pretty slow, because J.K. Dobbins has all the talent in the world. After this year, I believe he's a free agent as well, so he can go sign anywhere in the league at that point. And let's say he goes to the Kansas City Chiefs, who they probably should have taken over Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right, in that draft, or DeAndre Swift, one of these other guys. Man, J.K. Dobbins would be a killer on any other team because he does have good hands. He has soft hands, but with Baltimore, it's just, I'm a little worried about that. Again, this is just the Todd Monken, scheme. And just going back to, again, the Todd Monken, he was an offensive coordinator, so he's with Georgia the last 3 years. Before that, he was with Cleveland Browns in the Freddie Kitchens year.
Era.
Not great there. Not great there. But then he worked for Dirk Cutter under Tampa Bay with Jameis. And just really quickly, looking at some of the offense, right? So he's always been middle of the pack in terms of total points scored, 23, 18, 23, 22. This is the NFL ranking out of 32 teams. Not great, not even top half, right? But you look at the rushing versus passing offense, 2016 with Tampa Bay, they were 16th in attempts, 16th in the NFL in yards, 8th in touchdowns. The 2017 season, 3rd, 4th, and 10th. In attempts, yards, and touchdowns. 2018, the last year with Jameis, the infamous 30 for 30 season, they were 4th in attempts, 1st in yards, 3rd in touchdowns, 32nd in interceptions, which is just hilarious right there. But then you even go to 2019 with Cleveland, 19th, 22nd, 19th, kind of a dip there with Baker Mayfield. But the rushing side of it, the 2019 with Cleveland, they had Nick Chubb, so it makes sense why they took a massive step up that year. But all those years with Tampa, they were very close to the bottom of the league in terms of the NFL rankings in the rushing game. So that tells me they're going to want to throw the ball a lot. If they have Lamar Jackson back, Mark Andrews is going to be a steal. Rashad Bateman is going to be a steal. Quentin Johnston, when they draft him in the first round, is going to be a steal. So I do think that there's a lot of potential for the passing options on this team with Todd Monken. Do you share that belief?
I do agree with that. I'm on the other side of the Lamar story that I think he's gonna get. I think he's gonna be either. I think he's gonna be traded, in my opinion. Because I mean, I do feel it's going to help out, but I don't feel they have. I feel their weapons will get a bump, but I'm not sure if they'll have the sufficient weapons to do what they need to do. So like they don't have like the Mike Evans that Jameis had, and that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah.
I do like Bateman, and I do
Bateman
like
was cooking
Andrews,
this
but
year, though.
I know,
I know people
but
forget because he's been injured twice in 2 years, and
yes,
it really sucks
yeah,
for Bateman. But they're
it
injury
does.
prone till they're not. And Bateman was cooking this year
He
until he got
was, he
injured. He
was.
was killing it.
He was, and I do agree with that. So, I do feel it's going to be a hit on like J.K. Dobbins, which I love J.K. Dobbins, and I will fight to the death on that. I feel it's unfortunate that he has Lamar there hawking everything from him.
Yup.
But that's beside the point, But on the passing options, like that does help. And they do need another receiver. I think it's very interesting that their general manager came out. I think it was last week saying that like if they do get Lamar back, that they won't really go after another big name wide receiver because of the cost of Lamar, stuff
They
like
won't go
that.
off
So
after a free agent, right? But the problem with that
right,
is it's kind of a lie, I'll say, because big name free agent wide receivers don't want to go there to play because they run the ball so
Right.
heavily under Greg Roman,
So
right?
much. Yeah.
Now,
Yep.
Todd Monken might change that a little bit, but I think a lot of free agents this year, and it's not even a good free agent class, right?
No, it's not.
Juju or DJ Chark or some of these other guys are not going to want to go sign there. Next
Mhm.
year is when you'd want to see the free agent wide receivers kind of go there. That's why I think that they're going to invest again a high pick on a wide receiver in the draft, whether it's Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison with this team
Mhm.
would be pretty disgusting, to be
It
honest with
would
you.
be. I agree. I
He'd
agree
fit
with
the
that.
Hollywood Brown role pretty well, and then you'd have a
Mhm.
different skill set with him and Bateman. Quentin
Yep.
Johnston, he's kind of similar to Bateman in my opinion, but he's really
Mhm.
fast too, so it does
Yep.
help there. But we'll see what they ultimately end up doing. But I could see them taking a day 1 or day 2 wide receiver in the NFL draft this year. But no, it's a little bit tongue in cheek, right? Oh yeah, we're not going to go pay T. Higgins
Mhm.
$1 million bajillion dollars to come
Yep.
play here. He doesn't want to go there in the first place, right? So it's a little
Yeah.
different, but it's a good point by you.
Yep.
All right. So any last thoughts on Monken before we move on to the last guy here?
Nope.
All right. So the last guy is going to be Dave Canales with Canales. I don't know. He's going to be the new offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. First time guy at the position, so it's going to be difficult. What has he done in the past? He's been a quarterbacks coach for the Seattle Seahawks in 2022, passing game coordinator from 2021 to 2020, the quarterbacks coach in 2018, 2019, wide receivers coach. He's been with Seahawks basically his entire career. He started with the Seahawks in 2010, and he's just consistently worked his way up until he was the offensive passing game coordinator and then got a demotion back to quarterbacks coach this last year. Geno Smith came out and said that he has very high praise for Canales, and the one problem that I have with this, he's learned a lot from Pete Carroll. And if we know anything from Pete Carroll, he likes to run the ball and play very bland, balanced offenses. So for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, one, we don't know who their quarterback is going to be. There's a lot of teams out there right now that need a quarterback badly. And I fully expect someone like Derek Carr or Jimmy Garoppolo to come here. Now we're talking even Baker Mayfield would not be terrible here, or Teddy Bridgewater. Well, Jacoby Brissett maybe would come over here. But we're actually going to talk on the quarterback free agents tomorrow, so you'll go check that episode out then. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who they get at quarterback there. They have such good wide receiver weapons. It just kind of stinks because, I do like Rashad White quite a bit, but the offensive line is not in the best situation. So what do you think he does for this offense?
I mean, to be honest, I didn't hear of this guy until about 10 minutes ago. I'll be very honest. I do think it's interesting that he's been with Pete Carroll pretty much his whole
Mm-hmm.
career, which I think is very interesting. So, um, with that, like kind of going off what you said, like Pete Carroll is run heavy. He doesn't necessarily let the quarterbacks cook as much. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, for what he did with Geno last year was amazing. Kind of getting Geno into a position to where he could be relevant again, and
Right.
like glimpses of what we saw when Geno was coming out in the draft, many years ago. So, I think that's kind of what Tampa Bay is going to hold out hope for, that they can get a like a veteran in there, um, and then he can kind of develop him a little bit more and kind of play with those weapons a little bit. But the thing I see is I really think Tampa Bay is going to take apart some of those weapons. Like I wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
shocked if they traded Mike Evans.
I saw something about
Um,
that. So real
yeah,
quick, and I
yeah.
know that's going around a lot of places, but I actually saw someone from the Tampa Bay area talking about that pretty extensively. If they cut or trade Mike Evans, they only save $2 million this year versus
Right.
paying him like $14 million dead. So you're paying him $16 million for 14 dead. So it makes more sense to extend Mike Evans and trade someone like
Mhm.
Chris Godwin. who's
Right.
one, younger, two, can probably get a little bit higher of a return back, and three, I think his contract is a little more manageable than Mike Evans. But no, I have seen that everywhere. So you're not crazy to suggest that, but pretty interesting.
I've been seeing Evans, and then I've been seeing that they're going to cut Lenny uh,
Fournette,
Leonard
yeah,
Fournette.
he's gone
Yeah,
for sure.
which I feel he's gone. So I mean, really, the only one that's going to benefit in that offense is going to be Rashad White,
Mm-hmm.
and I am very excited to have that. I think he's a very good player. He has very good hands. I kind of think he's gonna. I wouldn't say he's gonna go into like a Ken Walker kind of role, but
Could.
I mean he could, but I don't think he's that
He's not that type of
style of
athlete,
runner.
I agree,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
he's very, very proficient through the air.
Yes,
So,
yes, yes, he is. So, I mean, I can see a bump in his usage, obviously, without Fournette being there. So that's really the only weapon right now that I see really getting a bump, you know, personally. So I'm not really super excited about it, but I feel it's kind. I mean they hired. They had to hire somebody. So I guess it's at least a decent hire.
the biggest
You know.
question that I'm gonna have is, what are they gonna do? Are they going to commit full on to a rebuild or not? So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah,
that's what I want
I
to
agree.
know. And until we see that, that's just the biggest question. So, um, we'll see how it ultimately ends up. But, you know, it's hard to predict what he's going to actually be able to do for this offense right now. He's never actually called
Yeah.
plays. He's never really been in that role. So,
Yep.
what's it going to look like? I can't really tell you. But that's the last guy. Any last thoughts on the coaching changes? Again, we're a little bit late with this one, but
Yeah.
back on track finally.
Yep. Yep. No, I'm all good on the coaching changes. It's. I mean, I will say it's some very good hires and very interesting ones, and hopefully hopefully your team is one of the better hires and not one of the questionable ones.
Very, very fair. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for joining us on our coaching roundup for the NFL. This is hopefully the last one we'll have to do this season, this off season, but you never know. Things are going to get crazy. I have a feeling here in a couple weeks. We're only a couple weeks away from free agency for the NFL, which is going to be exciting there. So that said, again, please like, comment, and subscribe to the video wherever you're listening. The podcast is available. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you've been able to see the video content and everything. We appreciate you guys. Leave a comment down below. Something, just helps with the algorithm. But the podcast is available on Spotify, Google, Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find it there. So thank you guys. Please tell one friend about the podcast, just trying to grow it. Trying to put out good content for you guys all season long. That kind of challenges the common perception of the hive mind that is the Dynasty offseason. So that said, thank you guys. You can find me again one more time on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, Dale on Twitter at Dynasty_Dale. Hit us up with any questions you guys might have. That said, thank you guys for joining us. Have a good night.